Part 2. I rarely do second parts to videos, but I woke up this morning thinking, God, all those 90s albums that I did not include. Now, this is a part 2 of music from the 1990s in the CD era. If you haven't watched part 1, you can watch that after this. You can go there. I just made it yesterday, and I realize there's a lot more. Now, here's the premise of this. This is my journey from 1990s. And these are only bands, with a few exceptions that kind of maybe started a little later, creeped into the 2000s, but really bands and artists that are 90s artists that started in the 1990s. Not like you're gonna have a Rolling Stone 90s album or a Paul McCartney 90s record, none of that shit, okay? This is music in the 90s. From when I was 36 to 46, I just had a son, became a father. I'm repeating a little bit from the last video. Now, I'm recording this before I post number 1, so there might be some of the bands that you all suggested, and continue, please. But these are bands that I bought on CD at the time. And of course, this was a time when vinyl was few and far between, and it was all about compact discs. And as I said in that one, just to repeat a little bit, bands made albums that were too long frequently and all that bullshit about secret tracks at the end. These are not ranked, not in any particular order, but I just kind of went through my collection because I bought a lot of CDs throughout the 1990s. And it's great music, no matter what the format, all right? So since I think Trump has disbanded the CDC, or at least he made it not important, so this could be considered the CDC, the compact disc community, right? Is that right? Compact disc, CDC. Some wanker's gonna hate that I mentioned politics, but come on, he's cutting every fucking thing that helps you, consumer protection, all the good stuff. Anyway, I digress. Music. Now, I just picked records that represent things, not necessarily the favorite record of that artist, but I'm gonna start out with, of course, an album that became huge, the second breakout for Beck, and not his second album by any means. He really started out in this kind of East LA cross between freak folk and country and indie, the ultimate indie artist. I did a video a couple years ago where I said the two greatest artists of the last quarter century in terms of artistic endeavors are Beck and Bjork. And I didn't get a lot of love for that video or a lot of viewers, but I still agree with that. Beck, his journey has been amazing, and I'm all in. Now, I think maybe I'm getting a little tired of his sort of dancey stuff, which I don't dislike, but okay, let's kind of weave back in, because he's done everything from country to hip hop, trip hop, all the hops, electronic a little bit, upbeat stuff, folky stuff, very British, Americana, all stuff. And this is one of the great records. And I think the Dust Brothers produced this one, so it's got some of that cross-pollination of hip-hop too, and beats and sampling. I think it's a wonderful record. And of course, Mellow Gold was his big breakout, I believe. But this is a fantastic album. So Beck. Now this one, I'm breaking my own rules, but this is 1989. But I got into the rest of his records into the 1990s. But this was a breakout, and this actually had a top 20 hit in the States. And that's Michael Penn's March and the song No Myth. If I could be if I could be Romeo in black jeans, if I could be Heathcliff, it's no myth. Of course, brother of the Penn brothers, Sean and the other Penn, the late other Penn. What's his name? The actor, Chris Penn. There we go. The great record. Would later marry Amy Mann, put out some amazing guitar stuff on his. What I like about this record, this is very Beatle-ish without ripping off the Beatles. It's that backwards guitar. This could have come out of the Revolver sessions if Chris Penn was at the Revolver sessions. A lot of cool backwards guitar stuff, harmonies. What a wonderful record. And his whole series of records into the 1990s are good, but this is the breakout one from 1989. So again, I'm pushing a little bit. The album's called March, and this was on BMG RCA Records. What a wonderful record. I like his voice. I like his double tracking. His production style is sublime. Now, in the 1990s, maybe they started in the 1980s, I don't remember, but I really liked Peter Gabriel's Real World label. There are a couple artists that are, you might call them vanity labels. I don't think they're vanities because they were putting out great stuff. Peter Gabriel did it with Real World, and Luaka Bop, that was David Byrne's kind of led label that had some esoteric stuff, some world music, some indie stuff. But this is amongst my favorite. I think I only have 2 albums of his, and he passed away some years ago. This is maybe right at 1990, and this is Jeffrey Oriyama, African singer. What a beautiful record from Uganda. There we go. Beautiful folk-based music, a lot of acoustic stuff, ethereal voice. This color code here, that's a better presentation of it, representing what country the music is from. And there's a couple here I remember going to Tower Records when I'd go to Columbus and Bay, and every time I'd see the Real Gone stuff, I'd check it out. And I think this is one I just grabbed because of the label, the cover. I didn't even listen to it. And this is amongst my favorite. Some of these have been released on vinyl since, and I did pick up the Jeffrey Oriyama records. I think they're really beautiful. Uncle Tupelo, and this is their last album. I think it was 1993, Andaline. This is kind of the album that really had critics and fans call it alt country music. Of course, Jeff Tweedy and Jay Farrar, and this is the last thing then they'd break up, and Jay would go and start Sunvolt, and Jeff Tweedy Wilco. I don't have Wilco here this time, but Wilco too. Wilco should be in here as well. Am, the record, that is a Rhino Hi-Fi. Don't sleep on that one. That's coming out from Rhino on vinyl. The Jayhawks, another one. I love Jayhawks. I didn't get their first album right away. This is the first one I got, Tomorrow the Green Grass. And I just love the hooks, the harmony on this. And in a way, this is the one that really hooked me of these kind of alt country things, more than Uncle Tupelo, more than Sunvolt, more than Wilco, because it was catchy. It was almost maybe easier on the palate initially, but I just love Gary Lotus. I mean, I love this whole cross-pollination of alt country, now we call Americana. I mean, there's a name for everything now and a subgenre of subgenres, but this album, I think it's a good introduction to the Jayhawks if you have no Jayhawks or you've never heard the Jayhawks. And this is the debut Beautiful Freak by Eels. Now the Eels is Mark Everett Oliver, or is it Mark Oliver Ever? I always get it wrong. He put 2 records prior to this under the moniker E. He is E. And I remember seeing, this is one that I bought because of an MTV video with that surrealist video, and I think they're floating around, but the song Beautiful Freak, Novocaine for the Soul, that was the single off this. And I remember buying this, and our family were driving somewhere, we played this, and my son really latched on to this. He probably was 3 or 4 years old. I just love this record. It's really his project, not a formal band, but I am all in. I still buy Eels records, and I think they're really good. And of course, he has a way of writing very simple songs. It seems like 3-4 chord songs. They seem so simple. They seem like you've heard them before, but they're original and they're really hook based. And some of it are really dark subject matter. Of course, his sister took her life, and after his father died too, a lot of tragedy and mental illness and stuff. But great artists, and I've seen them a couple times. In fact, I took my son to see the Eels at the Fillmore. Another band that, this isn't necessarily the one I was going to pull, but it's okay. Sundazed. Sundazed are kind of, again, that jingle jangle pop, dream pop a little bit, very ethereal. I love this music. This is a period of music that there's quite a few albums in that last video and this that have this kind of feel, like Belly, and that are just really beautiful and melodic. As I said in that video, I really like great hooks and I like great melody. Melody is important to me, not solely and not only, but I love good melody. And there's some bands that just have no melody, as far as I'm concerned. Didn't have to, but I think that's the problem I had with some grunge. I know people will argue with me. I don't have any Soundgarden here. I did get the first Soundgarden, ended up purging it eventually. I wasn't really a grunge fan. And as you can see with the records I showed, even though I did show Pearl Jam and Nirvana yesterday, Mudhoney too, but they come more, it's not late 80s maybe initially, but obviously Sun Volt, 1995, when Uncle Tupelo split up, Tweedy starts Wilco, Jay Farrar starts Sun Volt. This is the end of 1995. A fantastic country-ish record, more on the rock side. He's got the gruffer voice. Some people like it, some people don't. That's why I more went into Wilco direction, because of Tweedy's vocals. I love that. Now something completely different, which this record came to me out of nowhere, and I just really liked that hybrid of mashups, sampling, trip hop really, and jazz. And of course, this is Guru's Jazzmatazz. This was a record that, I mean, we played this record a ton in the house, and the whole family loved it, and it's really, really good. This is experimental fusion of hip hop and jazz, where they sample Roy Ayers, Donald Byrd, Ronnie Jordan, Courtney Pine, Lonnie Liston Smith, MC Solar. I mean, again, you got rap, jazz mixed up, and there's a certain chill to this music that was just great. And of course, the bars and restaurants at this time would play this record to death. This was so overplayed, but it's such a good record by Guru. And I just love this. I don't remember where I first heard it, but it's one of those records that expanded the audience of hip hop too, and infused it. And that was the time, and I have another thing like this in here too, because that was a time when, you know, people were sampling Blue Note records and jazz records, and it really opened up. Now in 1990, now this band did have independent records in the late 80s, but this is their major label debut, and this is another song that album that I connected with my son when we play this in the car, and this is Flood, They Might Be Giants. I just love, this is a perfect record, and they have a certain, you know, they're witty, they're great songwriters. Again, great hooks and harmonies and things, but in a little kind of a flat tone-ish way in their vocals. They're not beautiful voices, but somehow the two voices blend really beautifully. Flood, Put a Little Birdhouse in Your Soul. I think that was probably the single. Istanbul, Not Constantinople. But great, every track is great. A long record too, but really great. On Elektra Records, their major label debut. Here's the one that if I was going any kind of order, would have put right alongside of Jazzmatazz. And this is Us Three. And of course, it's kind of a takeoff on the wonderful Blue Note cover here. And this mixes Blue Note, classic jazz stuff with hip hop stuff, with soul. An incredible record, just a really great vibe to it. I love this record. You know, I've had people say, oh God, it's just a DJ, it's no talent in that. But introducing by DJ Shadow from Sacramento, California. This is such an amazing record. A friend of mine turned me on to it, and I couldn't believe what the DJ did as a performer, as putting things together, literally taking vinyl and just mixing it up. I mean, you could compare it, I know people think I'm crazy, to Dark Side of the Moon and these conceptual things, but just with found beats and other records and merging it together, having that gut feeling and that knowledge of the music and being quick on it and just putting it together. This is a great, great record. I love that they're in a, what record store is this? It's not Tower. Probably been there before, I don't know. He's from Sacramento, Bay Area guy, introducing DJ Shadow, an incredible record. And in the 90s, that was, you know, just great music there. Now going in a little more soulful, southern, swampy direction, and I got into this guy on his first 3 or 4 records, and I would buy these CDs. This is one I think I bought for the cover. I hadn't heard it either. And is this a second album or is this the first? I think this is the second. This is G Love and Special Sauce. It's got this kind of bluesy, funky soul thing. It's, you know, think of like Jack White, but I think more interesting than Jack White. A little more rootsy than Jack White. Maybe less rock and more blues, but maybe funky. But I just love his stuff. And all his records are really good around this period of time. You know, some of these artists I kind of just didn't follow once the 90s ended. But, and this was on OK, the old label. that used to be part of Columbia that they kind of revitalized. So it's got a rootsy feel to it, and it's some really great stuff. Then there's PJ Harvey. I am all in on PJ Harvey. This is a late 90s release, To Bring You My Love. I just love, there's a certain soul, kind of post-punk thing for her that she's, to me, one of the original women performers, writers. She plays the saxophone. Or is it the, I think it's saxophone as well. And she obviously sings the guitar and a great songwriter. A little bit of a post-punk feel, even though we're talking about the 1990s. Way beyond that, indie artist. But great records and very, very innovative. There's just a great broadness to her work. And I just think PJ Harvey is an incredible British artist. I love her. 4AD with their dream pop and, the other day I talked about Belly, and I talked about, I didn't talk about Heidi Berry, but that's 80s into the 90s, a kind of an American singer that's in that mood-based thing. Think of Cocteau Twins and that area. And of course, you can think of, what did I talk about yesterday? The Kim Deal and her sister and those records. But Amps, another offshoot of that whole thing. Again, I loved these, and I would buy a lot of these on 4AD just because of the label. I love the label. I love their output. I love the artwork. I love the design. I think Von Oliver, V23, did a lot of the design on most of these 4AD records around the time. Of course, going back to the Pixies in the 1980s and that whole thing. Of course, very accessible records, and there was just a great mood to these records. And this is the Amps, and I love that too. A Indian-born English artist, and this is Sheila Chandra, and I've showed her many times. So she has something like 46 octave voices, a very Indian bass, very ambient bass, some a cappella stuff mixed in with Eastern music and a British, I think she was in a TV show too in the UK. Oh, this is the compilation. Okay, this is the compilation retrospect. So I pulled maybe the wrong one I was gonna pull, but anytime you see her records, and some of these reissued on vinyl in the last 2 or 3 years, so you can't get them, but these CDs are beautiful. Probably recorded digitally, I guess, but it doesn't really matter, just the music, it's the music. This is haunting, beautiful, spiritual music. I just love Sheila Chandra, but this is a comp, but anyone, pick up these. I'm sure you can find them on compact disc, cheap these days. This is the debut. This is Tidal by Fiona Apple. This is so good. I am all in on, there's a fire in her piano playing, her vocals, just her huskiness and her songwriting. Some of her music, and I said this and people think I'm a little crazy, but a couple of her albums, just the harshness and the directness remind me of John Lennon singing in her performance, piano in Plastic Ono Band. Doesn't sound like Lennon at all, but has that intensity, and she just bears everything in some of her songwriting. If somebody fucks you over, you'll write about it, and that's Fiona Apple. But I just love her. I was able to see her only once so far, and I think she's an incredible artist. And she, doesn't do a lot of records. It takes her sometimes years to put out an album. I hope she does something soon. I think there's a single that she just dropped. Was it a cover that I just heard? But Fiona Apple, Tidal, her debut album. Another artist who had some records in Ireland in the 80s, but I didn't catch him till he got signed to Reprise Records in America, sort of a major label, and that is Luca Bloom. Luca Bloom is the younger brother of the great Irish folk singer Christy Moore, who, when I went to Ireland, 20, 25 years ago for a wedding, I bought all the Christy Moore albums I could. But this is Riverside. One of his albums, Electric Motorbike, is incredible. He's got that thick Irish accent. I saw him once when he played a club in San Francisco. Just great music and great records. Folky, like double and triple time the way he plays his guitar and sings, and just really great. He does a great cover on one of his records. It's not on here, I don't think. He does a fun cover of Dancing Queen, the ABBA song, and it works. And he makes it his own. It's got a great vibe to it, and I just think it's a brilliant cover. But Luca Bloom on Reprise Records. There you go. Another breakout hit Ireland again, right? The Cranberries. And of course, that song Linger was everywhere on the radio. And I am all in on a hit single, a hook that brings you in to the rest of the album. You know, I grew up with hit singles, Love and Spoonful. You buy the single or you buy the whole album. In America, the Beatles singles were on albums, unlike in the UK. Singles kind of are teasers, but they're great songs. And so Linger made me buy this record. And of course, it's a fantastic record. Dolores O'Riordan, we lost her a few years ago, unfortunately. That fierce song she had about someone shot John Lennon on another album later on, incredible record. All these CDs, all these albums of Cranberries are incredible records. Really, really wonderful, powerful records. Going back to me mentioning Luaka Bop, that was the label put out by David Byrne. Mostly a lot of world music, but there were certain artists he'd signed. And this one I bought because of the cover. I just thought it was so cool. The Mysterious Tale of How I Shouted Wrong-Eyed Jesus by Jim White. This is a special record, and they finally have put out 2 of his records on vinyl. They're still hard to get on vinyl. But this guy is very unique. He's like a country rock, but more of a country rock, more of a hip hop country artist with sampling, with effects, but there's certain hooks, and he's got a little sense of humor. Think of Warren Zevon on Randy Newman, not sound-wise, but he could definitely be. Back in the day, if he was around the early 70s, he would be on Warner Brothers Records and put like 8 records out, even if he didn't sell them. So he's got a cult status. I hope all the records by Jim White that were on Luaka Bop come out on vinyl, because they're exceptional records. And there is a documentary that I have, a DVD, sort of based on this, which is pretty wild. But a great writer, great performer, has an intimate sound. You know, in a way, I would compare him somewhat to a more countrified Beck, you know, in terms of his production and mixing modern music with traditional music, songwriting styles. So Jim White is nothing like Beck and vice versa, but I could see them being in the same category for some people. If you want to, you know, catch on or get a taste of what he is, Beck would be it. Early Beck, the early Beck, pre-Odelay Beck. Now, of course, OK Computer by Radiohead. I remember I didn't have Radiohead. I missed Pablo Honey. Later, of course, I couldn't get away from Creep because I think we got our son Guitar Hero, one of those games, and Creep was there all the time. But I liked it. It wasn't until 2001 when I got Kid A that blew me away. I kind of preferred the electronic stuff. I know a lot of the guitar freaks hated when Radiohead got rid of their guitar-based sound and went into electronics. I understand that. But I remember, I think it was Mojo and Q and all. I used to get those British magazines every month. And this was like the best of that year in 1990, is it? 96, 98, whatever. Late 90s, I'm sorry. This was considered the best album from the British point of view. And it is a great record. Remember, I finally bought it on CD. Not this one. This is an expanded one that came out later with some outtakes or other mixes or something, you know, when they expanded these records. Capitol Records did. I first heard this after all these rave reviews, and I liked it, but I just thought it was so gimmicky, especially with the like Stephen Hawking voice, like Pink Floyd would do later on with David Gilmour. I liked it, but I didn't love it. And I know it's amongst people's favorite if they don't like Pablo Honey or the earlier stuff, but I ended up getting everything, and I like those better. I do like this record. I don't love it like a lot of other people. I would play Kid A any day over that. Every day. My love for British music never ended. Of course, I mentioned Oasis earlier and some of the Brit bands. I don't have any Pulp here. I realized Pulp and Suede I didn't get later into the 2000s possibly. Kind of missed them. But one album I really liked, and I got in the, 93, I think this came out. This was the 3rd album, and probably their best album, and definitely their most popular in the States. And that is the great album by the Teenage Fan Club. This is called Bandwagonesque, but this is a band I quite like, and great hooks again. There is that kind of retro thing from these early 90s bands that hark back to the 60s bands in Britain. I mean, this stuff wasn't massive in the US, but still it had a bigger than a cult following, and it was the modern rock stations would play some of this stuff. And also another one that really became a favorite of the alt set, I guess, and the shoegaze set, and fans of the cocktail, but it became one of these artists, one of these bands, if you will, that just seemed to be played everywhere, and especially this album. This is the second album by Mazzy Star. The first album was recorded by Daniel Roebuck, one of the main guy in the band with Hope Sandoval, that wonderful singer. Everyone thinks Mazzy Star is the singer, but that's Hope Sandoval, and the outfit is Mazzy Star. But that first album was recorded in San Francisco. This is the second album, so tonight, That I Might See. And of course, Fade Into You, that slow, beautiful, soothing vocal by Hope Sandoval, and just the ethereal production on this just was everywhere. You can't get away from this in movies, soundtracks, TV shows, bars, restaurants. There's something about this album. Now, I did not steal my name from this band. Maslov has been a nickname on and off since I was a kid, going way back. It was Mazzy occasionally, and it kind of didn't catch on till later in life, and of course I use it here and now. Now you call me Mazzy, as do I in the third person. But a wonderful record. Of course, all the few records by Mazzy Star are wonderful, as well as Hope Sandoval's later solo record. One of my favorites, especially the last album, was it 1999? So the last album they put out in 1999, their third album, is Summer Teeth. This is amongst my favorite Wilco records, and this has been issued over the years. I think maybe even Nonsuch picked it up and did it, but this would be a great Rhino audiophile one if they decided to put out. Now this has more of the Jay Bennett's songwriting on here, not just Jeff Tweedy, and this is a really good album. Again, one of my favorites, maybe up until Yankee Foxtrot, but I think they're one of the great consistent bands that really kind of push the envelope in the Americana alt-country realm, where they kind of expand out. But what a great album. This is Summer Teeth from 1999. Another band that I really loved and I got on CD, and this is a band that, about 2 years ago, reissues, came out finally on vinyl. There's been a couple over the decades, but Universal Music fucked it up when they put these out there. They sound terrible. But that's Spilt Milk by Jellyfish. This is like the 93, 94, whenever this was. This is an incredible record from San Francisco, this band. And they have such hooks, such harmonies. They're quirky a little bit. Think of, Sparks and They Might Be Giants, but MGMT Management, whatever they're called, kind of emulated this too with the harmonies and the quirkiness. But these two records they did, these Soul 2 records really, are wonderful records. The debut and then Spilt Milk here. I just love, there's a humor in it, but they're so well recorded. And the vocals on this band, and it kind of didn't do much. I mean, it definitely had a cult following. But Jellyfish, incredible record. They need really good vinyl versions. I know Omnivore did a couple of them. I have one of them from 10 or 12 years ago. Those are better than the new ones. I ended up getting rid of them. Norman, which is last name, but Fatboy Slim. One of the greatest videos ever is Fatboy Slim, the one with Christopher Walken dancing, floating, dancing down the street. What a great dancer. But this is You've Come a Long Way, Baby, Fatboy Slim. Again, not in the same vein as DJ Shadow, because he's actually performing, but a lot of their mixes and mashups included in here. But this is a wonderful record. And of course, anytime you see someone show a record collection like that, this guy is into music, and it's got to be a really good record. I mean, you can't get away from the music collection there. And I love it. There are samples galore, and it's just a great, great record. Thank you, Norman. Calexico and Black Light. And they do this expansive Americana thing like no one else. I mean, it's more influenced not by country music, but by Morricone's spaghetti Western soundtracks. It's like very cinematic music, acoustic guitar with some like accordion and sometimes Mexicali trumpets. And this is such a great record. I love the vocals. I love the arrangements. I have all Calexico all day, all the time. I can't have enough of Calexico. Wonderful, wonderful band. And of course, maybe the Black Light might be a cool thing. Again, they do some hip hop mixes in here and some really interesting mashup type things a little bit. Not really that, but effects right in that pocket there. And I just think it's so cool. So Calexico, one of my very favorites. Now I'm going to end up with several women because it was a great time for independent women. Remember the whole Lilith Fair thing that happened because of Tori Amos and Sarah McLachlan? And there's a lot of the guys that think that stuff is precious, only female-based. But I really kind of got into some of that too around this time. Maybe it's being a new father. But this album really was... It touched me. I really thought there's a beauty in this. And maybe it's my newly fatherhood, but Tori Amos's Little Earthquake, and the song that I kept hearing was Crucify all over. You know, great piano player, great songwriter, very personal, and I kept up with her. I think I have 5 of her CDs, and I'm not ashamed to say that I like these Tori Amos records. Now, I did have a friend that worked at WIA, and he gave me some of these CDs too. So would I have bought them? I think some of them, yes, but there is an EP, this had the single Crucify, the remix of it, but it had 2 covers, which I thought were just really killer. A cover of Angie by the Rolling Stones, but the one that was really cool, and this is not too far after the original came out. This is, she has a cover of Smells Like Teen Spirit, of course, the Nirvana song. And this is a 5-track EP. I think it's excellent. Tori Amos is an important artist, and I did see her once ever live, and she was great. You know, she has her leg coming out, split skirt from the piano, like pointed toward the audience as she's, wow, look at him shaking the camera, shaking the camera there. It's really cool. And the other one which I just mentioned, and I just love this record. It's schmaltzy, it's beautiful. There's something about her voice that really kind of excites me. And this is Sarah McLachlan, whatever. It's Fumbling Toward Ecstasy. I don't care what you say, how schmaltzy, how hook-based. That song, Ice Cream, she does on here. Our love is like ice cream, whatever the lyric is. It's been a while since I listened to it. I think it's so beautiful. So I have like maybe 3 CDs of Sarah McLachlan. Just a great artist, great music. I like this stuff. That whole Lilith Fair thing was big. And lastly, Amy Mann. Amy Mann, Bachelor number 2, The Last Remains of the Dodo. Obviously, from Till Tuesday. I never got into Till Tuesday, but I really just love her sound. And, you know, someone posted something when I mentioned, I think it was on Instagram, I picked up Lost in Space, just came out on vinyl of hers. And someone posted something about, yeah, music's too female-oriented. Give me a fucking break. Do you say that about the guys? I like her record. I like all her records. And she's got a certain little sense of humor occasionally, but just well-crafted records, well-written and well-produced records. Occasionally, Michael Penn, her husband, will play on some of her stuff. She did a great Christmas record that has a cover of Mr. Grinch, which is incredible. But I think this is a beautiful record, and I think all her records need to be issued on vinyl. So that was part 2 of the 1990s. My journey through 1990s. I'm not going to do a part 3. There's more, I'm sure. Slater Kinney, didn't include them. As I said, I didn't include Pavement, Bjork. I have all those on vinyl. I don't think I have the 90 ones on a compact disc for some reason. Thank you very much for watching. Again, your choices. Mazzy loves you.